Okay, so we have just started the recording. As per usual, we will begin reviewing the performance of our languages. So I've updated the performance status yesterday. Very strong performance across the board, as you can see here. We have French Canadian, Latin American, Spanish, and Spanish from Spain at 100%. Strong performance in Mandarin, Italian, Arabic, and German. Portuguese from Portugal. Also Russian and Ukrainian. Hindi. Nice work there, Yagnesh. You brought it up quite significantly with all of your efforts there. Portuguese from Brazil has machine translations activated, but we're doing better on the reviews there too. Still covering Indonesian with ABC Online courses, and Danish has improved quite a lot as well. Thai was pretty flat this week, same with Greek. Turkish has been a strong performer throughout, as well as Hebrew, and we recently added Spanish from Argentina because Jessica is covering ES 419 and Spanish from Spain, but she had some additional spare time to assist with the strings for Spanish from Argentina as well. So it's looking pretty good. Any questions about?
Eden, under Indonesia, you put my name on instead of ABC Learning.
Oh, is it ABC Online Learning? Okay.
Yes, it was.
Okay. Okay, I will update that. Thank you, Cecilia.
Indonesian, that one?
Yeah, okay, I will change it to Dean. Any other adjustments?
We are still working on the platform, edX platform, right? That part, not other.
Yes, we are still translating out of that project exactly until the Open edX translation project goes live for crowdsourced translations.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Nope. Okay. So let me go to the agenda. Okay. So first on the agenda, we have the language code usage strategy, and we had some discussions in GitHub as well as the translation Slack channel about proper use of language codes. There are a few proposed strategies on how we can optimize this approach. The challenging part by having country-specific codes is that because the integration is tied to the detection of the web browser, the language may not apply to certain countries that may use the same language. So one example that we discussed previously is for Austria using German or picking up German, but because we're using the language code DE_DE, it's not picking up the translations for it. It's pulling it from a different resource, just the resources. So one of the things that we have discussed in the past is perhaps changing the configuration that relies on the web browser detection. But I don't know, Omar, if you've discussed this with Brian, because we want to ensure for the Open edX translations project that we don't have these mismatches and a better organized process moving forward. What you determined to be the best approach regarding this?
I actually haven't gotten involved in this discussion because I'm not that familiar with like how language code works. So yeah, my experience is basically Arabic and French Canadian. So yeah, it requires a lot of research. Therefore, I didn't find the time to do that.
I can speak to this. So basically the idea is with a browser, it will first try to grab the language specific code that you have set as your browser's language. If it doesn't find that, it will try to find the language without the country specific. First, it'll try to find it with the country code. If it can, then it uses that. If it doesn't find it with the country code, it tries to find it without the country code. If it doesn't find that, then it will just go and default, at which point we have logic in the Open edX platform to say, hey, I selected a language, so that'll actually override all of it. But by default, it'll just end up going to English. So we'd end up having a bunch of people that, to use German as the example, German in Austria, they would request German Austria. It wouldn't find it. It would then say, okay, well, let's just grab German, DE, wouldn't find it, and then it would fall back to English. So if we have a set of, here is our generic version of the language codes, even if it is the same as one of the countries that we have, I think that would be an ideal way to ensure that things fall back as we would expect them to, or as users would expect them to.
So is there a way, thank you, Brian, for providing this overview. Is there a way to configure it so as such that if it does not find DEAT, to pull directly from DE_DE, or even if it detects the web browser ID AT, just to automatically pull from DE_DE? Is there a way to set it this way?
I mean, it would take quite a bit of logic changing in platform to handle that. It's not impossible, but it does add complications, and it kind of moves us away from following the standards in a sense. Like we would be setting DE as DE. That would basically be the way to implement that, right? We would do the translations in DE, but then have something that says, hey, treat DE as DE. That it's possible. I don't know if that's necessarily cleaner than just having a note that, hey, Germany is being done in DE. We are setting that as our default. This is what we fall back to, and just kind of choosing a country that for each language that also works as our fallback. But that, because that also gives us the ability to say, hey, we actually have some generic things that we want to do, and now we want to support a generic language as well, then we could just copy the generic one, create the language country specific one, at which point we would make any of the language specific changes that we wanted. Because really what we can do is have only the country specific things in the countries, and then do any of the generic translations in the non-country specific ones, and then be able to fall back unless there's something that is country specific that we need to deal with. So I think we're not utilizing the power of the fallbacks as much as we could if we had a non-country code language just in Transifex.
Yes, thank you, Brian. I know, Pierre, you have your hand up. Just one quick comment in regards to that, Brian, is that because we crowdsource translations and reviews of translations and Transifex, sometimes that communication doesn't always land everywhere. So yes, we can send out notification, but it may not necessarily change the behaviors of all users within Transifex. But certainly with the languages that we cover in this group, we can change it and have the reviewers work on the language codes that you have specified that are non-country specific. But just wanted to point that out as one potential challenge. Go ahead, Pierre.
Well, one of the major problems I see with this technique is that, for example, in French, you would have people who would use, at least on our side, users who would come from IT or would come from other French-speaking country that would put their language code as FR and not FR_CA. And then you would have to support both languages or both variants because there are technical terms that are different from one variant to the other. So I think that what we have been doing for the past is that instead of using FR_CA, we put it as FR in our own fork so that any versions of FR would be translated to FR_CA from our website. I don't know if I'm making this clear.
Yes, it's very clear, and I think that's actually a very good point. There are country-specific or region-specific differences, and in certain regions more significant than others, and that would be challenging in that case. I know in the past we had somebody propose leveraging an approach that is not browser-based, but I don't know, Brian, what are your thoughts based on what Pierre just said?
Well, it sounds like for that specific site, what you would do is fork the OpenEdX translations repo. This is post OEP 58. You would fork the OpenEdX translations repo and just change the name of a folder. And then you would be fine. But as far as what the default should be that people then make choices from, that's kind of a different question. If there is a scenario where a specific site wants to use a specific site wants to use FRCA as the default, and a different site might want to use FRFR as the default. That's basically what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
So in that case, maybe it makes sense to symlink in OpenEdX translations. This is probably something Omar would think about, but being able to just say, okay,
Brian, that is actually what we're doing right now.
Yeah, okay, because if we just symlink in OpenEdX translations and then choose a default and then allow people to, if you just fork OpenEdX translations, the repo, then you could change the symlink. That might not be a bad way to handle it in a scenario like that. But at the same time, I do think that it's worth looking into, especially the ones where we only have one, how country specific the translations are, and if it is worth just using a non-country specific code. But if we definitely want to ensure we're staying with language specific codes, then I think a symlink strategy is perfectly reasonable.
I know that in the past there were problems with Portuguese because the Portuguese from Portugal is different than the one from Brazil.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually quite the differences are quite significant. What do you think about Pierre and Pedro? What do you think about the symlink strategy? Would that work for you guys, or?
Well, I could say that, like you were saying right now, for the Brazilians, it's more difficult for them to understand the Portuguese from Portugal than from our side. So, in fact, the Portuguese from Portugal are usually understand better the Portuguese from Brazil. which means that for us, it's much easier to, well, we understand that this Portuguese from Brazil. Immediately we could see that. But yeah, it could be a strategy, but I'm not sure about what is the acceptance then from the users, because some of them might be or get a little bit well, they are more conservative, and then if they see a language that it's not the typical one that they are used to, like the Portuguese from Portugal, then they will just switch off the platform, which is not nice, I would say. But I'm thinking as a user experience for some users.
I think, yeah, like the symlinking, I'm surprised to see that Pierre is using the symlink. But yeah, like my ask for all of you, if you're like using the hack, if you're like using like the OpenEdX translations in a unusual way, please let us know. Even if we don't fix it, at least we don't work against your use case, or we provide, let's say, a common hack that everyone uses, or we make it a native feature in Atlas or in the OpenEdX translations repo. Keep in mind that we are working, we're using Git as the infrastructure a lot in pulling, in managing, and in syncing, and like, so it's all a Git system with a little over abstraction. So depending on Git support and the roadmap, we can use some features and others we can't. So yeah, so the symlinking thing is definitely something that we can take a look into. Pierre, if you don't mind, go on the OpenEdX translation repo and let us know, share your thoughts there. What's the hack that we would ideally support and make French, let's say, a copy of French Canadian? Yeah.
Well, if French was a copy of French Canadian, then it's the French from France who would have a problem.
Oh, I see, yeah. It's a little bit inactive at the moment, right? French from France?
Yeah, but we are still supporting fun, aren't we?
Of course.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that, yeah, it's not making it in the languages. Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah, I see a counter. Let's have an issue for this, even if we don't solve it.
Okay. So Pierre, you will make those updates?
Which updates?
That Omar just suggested. You want Pierre to create an issue, right?
Yeah, even if say a couple of words, let's
Okay.
have it documented. Yeah, somewhere.
Well, oh, sorry. Pierre, you're muted.
Sorry. I would say the problem is much more than translation, because 9 years ago when we started our OpenEdX platform, we were using FR because we didn't have any controls on FR_CA. So most of our users are registered as FR in the platform. So we would have to change all users to FRCA. And that's the reason why we decided to link FR to FRCA, so that users and anybody who would come to the platform would be able to see their translation in French. So I know it's a hack, but it's a hack that is based because we didn't have FR_CA at the beginning of the project. And we're going way back now. But it has always been useful for us because, you know, people would see FR translation, and any web browser that would come, and be it FRCA, or FRBE for Belgium, or then they would pick up FR in their web browser because of what Brian was suggesting of the way that the browser would handle the different variants of a language. And that's why, for example, we were taking opportunity with the fact that in Django, you can specify the dark language, where you specify the languages that your website supports. And that has been a problem with me when, for example, in the MFEs, you would have 10 or 12 languages that are supported that you can select, while I would definitely prefer to have MFEs only handle the languages that are in the dark lang of the platform. That's a problem that I reported to the MFEs working group a long time ago.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's so the MFE. I think what you're referring is that the account MFE, which lets you select.
Yeah,
That's the one with the problem. Yeah, we've had a specific automation after the make pull for the studio. I think we can copy that to the account MFE. It's not that hard. I mean, we can take a look at that.
okay, thanks.
The only concern I would put, and sorry, Alexandra, for I know you've had your hand up for this, is just a quick response. The only concern I would have about making it so we can only select the dark lang supported languages in MFEs is that someone who has a browser based language being set might be able to get into a language that is not in the account MFE dropdown at that point. So that is one edge case that we need to think about. But yeah, sorry, that's all I had.
But Brian, that would mean that the site is supporting multiple languages while you might only want to support a few.
Yeah,
Because
so,
if you don't have translation in Spanish on your web server, then you shouldn't be able to give Spanish translation. Am I wrong in assuming that?
Sorry, Brian, you're muted.
yeah, the idea is that the MFEs already have a hard-coded set of languages that are known to have translations within the Transifex projects that people are working in within this group. And so it would be saying, these are all of the languages that are officially supported as translated. Like, these are all the official translations that exist for this MFE. And so that is still hard coded into an MFE. And at that point, a user, even if it was just configured to not be able to different language in the account MFE, the MFE would still say, oh, well, this is an officially supported language. We still have this one. So it would still translate into that. If somehow those aren't being pulled, then we also need to update the supported languages that the MFE knows about at that level, not just at the what you can select level.
But we were talking earlier about user experience. Wouldn't that be a bad user experience to see that one part of the system is being translated and another is not being translated?
Well, the idea is that any of the languages that are supported in an MFE, like, we wouldn't have this MFE supports more languages than this other MFE, right?
No, not on the MFE's side, but on the rest of the system. I know that we're talking about every part of the system being an MFE in the future, but for example, if your dashboard is currently only in French and English, I don't think I want it in Russian or Spanish or Italian. But the MFEs can.
Yeah, so as I said, what we would need to do is make it so MFEs only support, like, we get rid of the idea of here are all of the supported languages and make it so we can override that based on how things are being configured.
Yeah.
And that does involve changing every MFE to support that, as opposed to the current strategy of here are all of the languages that we know this MFE has been translated into. So what we would need to do is basically have a way to override that and integrate that into every MFE. And it's not the end of the world. It's definitely doable, but it is a change. And yeah.
Okay. Alexandra, I know you had your hand up as well.
Yeah. I just wanted to add probably some clarification for myself as well. I feel like we brought up a couple of issues actually, which may have a bit different solutions. And correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've heard, like based on the current Open edX flow of like selecting the languages for use, we have an issue when if you're like trying to use DEAT language and it does not find it, it will use English as a default because like DE from Germany is basically DE, right? That's like one thing I hear. Another one is that there are actually a lot of languages that have differences in them across the region, like Portuguese, like French. And we also have constraints in terms of amount of languages that MFE currently supported, and that is limited to what the capacity or ownership of current translation working group is. So I feel like these are like a bit of different problems, and it combines in like more complicated probably solution, which on my side, probably because I'm standing a bit apart, seems really logical to have like one unified DE language for like Germany and use that as a default if DEAT was not found. But I feel like we should probably work more about documentation and explanation of how currently Open edX detects and selects the languages. We can do that as a working group by writing a documentation, probably also a page or like how-to on the Open edX site as well. And as for the languages that are not currently supported by translations working group, if we go that approach and we do not have anyone here who can actually support the French language from like France, we probably can communicate with our like customers, with our previous project, and trying to find someone to cover that so that we have a solid base of like all the languages with no like region mark behind those, to make sure that if DEAT or Canadian French is not found, we at least have some basic like French and some basic Portuguese there. What do you think about that?
I think that aligns very well with the symlink strategy that we were talking about, because that allows us to, especially with documentation, we would be able to say the way this is treated within the Open edX platform by default is DE is symlinked to DE, meaning that we will fall back to our German translations. And that's because the folder for DE without underscore DE is just linking to all of the translations that exist in DE underscore DE. So if that is documented and people know that that's the case, then the translations that are happening within DEDE can still be known to be the Germany translations. And it will be known that by default, that is treated as also just generic German. We would then want to document every single language that we are doing that for.
Yeah.
So every language that we only have language-specific codes, country-specific codes for, we would want to also make a symlink to a non-country-specific code and document which country-specific code is being used as the default. Then we would want documentation for site operators to be able to say, if you want to change this, this is how you handle that. The one use case this does not fully support is if somebody wants to say, you know what, we do not want to symlink to a generic one. We want to only support country code specific ones. And if someone is requesting the generic one, we want to say this is unsupported. We only have FRCA, for example. We don't have FR. That could be, it's not Pierre's use case, but it seems like it might be a use case. And in that case, have people fall back to English, because that's just, and then they fall back to English, go into settings, and then they can see what languages are available and say, oh, okay, so French doesn't exist. I guess I can use Canadian French, right? And then they would actively know that they had made the choice to use French FRCA. And so anything that feels off won't be automatically off to them. It'll be something where they understood that they made that choice. And so I can see people wanting it to be multiple ways. But yeah, the symlink strategy does support that. It's something where either you delete the symlinks if you don't want to have a generic country code, or you use the default symlinks that we have documented as this is what the fallback languages are for any given, this is what the country code that is being used as the default is for any given language. Or you can change the symlink and have it so it points to a different one, like Pierre's use case, where you would say, you know what, I want the default to actually be FRCA, as opposed to something where I would think that we might have FRFR as our default within the platform. That's a discussion to be had, but I could see it going that way. And I think that covers most of the use cases that we've discussed. That is definitely separate from the what languages are supported in MFEs. That is a separate issue, which, yeah, needs to be addressed. But from a how do we make sure that we are handling languages without country-specific code standpoint, I think this is a good strategy.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's, it looks like that's the consensus of the group. Omar, we actually already had a ticket on the GitHub board. Pierre, I tagged you in it if you want to add any additional comments, but we can make that the consensus, continue the use of language codes with the symlink strategy. And then on the documentation side, what we can do is cover it, start off at least with the languages that we support in this group. I can create another column in Confluence that indicates which language codes should be covered in particular regions, and then we can update that information in the documentation as well.
Yeah, we can also include like the explanation of the logic that OpenEdX uses when it defines what language it will like use, basically. And yeah, the ideal way would be to actually have the generic version of each language also to be covered by someone in the translation working group. I mean, it gives a lot of work to the working group to find someone to translate it, or like at least we can estimate it and ask for help from the translators or ask someone from our clients to take ownership of that. But I'm not a technical person, but it gives me a feeling that it on the back end of Open edX code, it will be like much more cleaner solution.
Yes, actually, that's a good point. I can simplify this process by activating machine translations for the generic codes. That way, we just need a dedicated reviewer in this group to review the machine translation output. But it would definitely save a lot of time on that side.
Yeah, sounds like a good plan.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so the next topic on the agenda is the Open edX translations project. There were some questions around that. When can translators start to use that project? I don't know, Brian and Oma, if you have any updates on that. I know it's still in the testing phase. I was not able, even though I'm an admin in Transifex, I was not able to add translators to that project. So just wanted to get your guidance on that.
Let me see if I can get you on as an admin on that project, because it's strange that you can't. Let me see if I can make sure that you are a maintainer on that project first and foremost. But yeah,
Sure.
Pierre has something to say.
Thank you.
Well, I've noticed today before the meeting that I had already translated the strings for aspects in the Open edX translations, and I realized today that they were coming back as unreviewed or untranslated. So I don't know if that's a problem or something that is going on with Open edX translations, but I found that very particular this morning. It's as if it had lost the translations I had made before. And I know that I had mentioned to Brian Smith that I had done the translation and that they were using it on the aspects demo site.
Yeah, I'm looking for that right now. Just a second. I'm not even seeing aspects in resources on. Oh no, there it is. Tutor contrib aspects.
Yeah. Or
It
maybe it changed names or something, but
says 49% reviewed, 74% translated.
I know, but I did that 100% about 2-3 weeks ago.
108 total strings. Is that how many you did? Do you remember?
I can't remember right now. Sorry.
Yeah, because it's possible that just more strings were added. Like that's
Yeah, but it's definitely the strings I've translated before.
okay. Then I am. It says last activity 11 minutes ago.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. I will have to. Yeah, Omar might have an answer.
Which project is that? The MFE communication MFE or the aspects?
The aspect one. Because I'm pretty sure that when I did the translations, the name of the resource wasn't translations/tutor config aspects translations or transifex input.
What was it?
Translations, tutor contrib aspects /transifex _ input.yaml.
Sorry, I'm looking at the resource right now, and I can check the history. That's the good thing about the current implementation. Do you have an idea when did you first translate it? Let's say all of it, or like a big part of it?
That was before the last meeting, if I remember correctly.
So a month ago, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We can chat about it. We can have me on Slack. Take a look at this list. And this is the Git commit history for the French locale for the aspects, which is the only translations that we have. So So let me know. Let's have a sample and let me know if we can identify an issue. Possibly it could be just added more spaces, and in the source, or it could be that our scripts are losing translations. It could be this or that.
Is anyone else in this group interested in assisting with the Open edX translations project as part of this testing phase? You don't have to tell me now. If you want to follow up later in Slack, let me know. But if you're interested, we can certainly add you because I think we only have French Canadian covered so far and Spanish ES 419, correct? Yeah.
I'm not, to be honest, I'm not sure what is expected here. So I'm not sure if I can qualify, but I'm willing to help.
Okay.
I think the big question is, when are we ready to make the switch over and say, all right, all translation work should be done in Open edX translations. I assume that there are still going to be some minor fixes for legacy stuff, especially with Quince at this point. So it might just be when that is fully out the door that we make the switch over. But if we are already happy with where all the translations are for Quince, then making the switch earlier is perfectly reasonable. And then we don't need to keep trying to sync stuff over, because I feel like trying to sync stuff over, it's great to get us to where we are now, but we should probably have all right, the final sync happened. Now the new work should all be done in Open edX translations date set.
Yeah.
All right. So basically, we need to test more languages with this new flow, like test if that works all right. And how can I do that?
Yeah. Brian can add you. Do you want to test it for Ukrainian?
Yeah, definitely. I can do that.
Brian, do you mind adding her to the?
Yeah, as a reviewer.
Yes, exactly.
Yep, not a problem.
Thank you very much. Okay, any additional questions regarding the Open edX translations project, which will replace the edX platform project? No, okay.
As well as the exoblocks. They will both be merged into a single project.
Yeah. Okay, then we can move to the next topic, which is Omar, you posted on Slack, you wanted to have an approach for handling string errors that obstruct the workflow. What we have discussed in the past in this group is that we can leverage our existing Slack channel for developers to post issues, and they have the Confluence page to find the dedicated reviewers for a given language, and then we can tag those. So one example is actually, if you look at the Slack channel, Rebecca posted something this morning, an error in the Hindi language, and then I tagged Yagnesh, who's our dedicated reviewer, to help correct it. Is that approach satisfactory, or do you think there should be an alternative approach? What are your thoughts on this? Omar, you're muted.
If you don't mind, I can add some context here.
Yes, please.
Sure. So I'm going to share my screen here. This is basically the Open edX translations repository. We can see some manual pull requests, like developer pull requests here by myself, Shadi, and we're trying to improve the repository as part of the OAP58 work. And here we have the Transifex integration bot syncing the translations that's in Ukrainian from Transifex to this repository. We can open this pull request and see that it has an error. So that's why it's stuck, it's not merged. Otherwise, this pull request should be immediately merged. We can see that it has a bug here, like an error message. Basically, some translations are invalid. This is automated translations validator. Most probably, this will be some directives being translated. So what we are thinking is that, like what Eden have said earlier, is that we would like to post these messages in Slack, but tag ideally specific translators. So of course, I don't know Ukrainian, and I shouldn't be tagged. But if someone wants, like, knows Ukrainian, there would be a list here, for example, like in this repository, that GitHub Actions workflow would notify the specific contributor, either in Slack or in GitHub, or whatever way that we think is convenient. So if everyone agrees that Slack is the way, we'll use Slack. If everyone thinks that GitHub is the way, we will use GitHub tags. I think GitHub Actions can tag a specific committer. So that's basically the choice. Which channel do you prefer that these comments are posted? Is it Slack or GitHub or Transifex or email? That's up to us to decide.
As a owner of the Ukrainian translations, the main contributor here, I do not know the person who made this pull request. So if we'll be tagging him, that would probably be not the ideal way. If you could tag me in the Slack, I will definitely take a look at it and ask my team to help me.
Sure. So this
so the pull requests are automated. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So this is just something where anything that changes in Transifex automatically gets pull requested to this repo. So that way we have, instead of just like direct commits, we have it making pull requests and then those make it in. So through the process of having a pull request, it also runs validation to ensure that nothing's going to break once we actually try to use these in the application. Yeah. And so what this has said is, hey, if we tried to use this in the application, it would break. We need to change the translations in Transifex in order to not break the application when we start using these translations.
Okay, so I think Slack is a good way to reach the reviewers of the languages covered. But Omar, you said that you have to specify the list of reviewers in GitHub as well, so that the developers have it, see it within the GitHub issue. So can you pull that information directly from Transifex into GitHub, or do you need to use the table that we have in Confluence that lists it and then manually input that data?
I mean, we could probably just link to Transifex on the GitHub pull request when we have an error, have it. So we also just drop a message saying, hey, to see who's the reviewer for this language, go to this link. And then we'd just be able to use that. So that way it's always up to date and we don't need to pull stuff all the time, at least for a V1 kind of thing, right? If we wanted to get more fancy, we could. But for this here, at least you have a link, you know where to find who you're supposed to tag. And then as somebody that sees this failure, you just say, oh, okay, I go to this link, see who to tag, and then link this to in Slack and say, hey, there are some errors in a couple of translations. You were listed as a reviewer in Transifex, so would you mind taking a look?
Mm-hmm. Okay, that works well. Perfect. Okay, any more questions regarding this process? No. Okay, the next topic is an update on the translation documentation. Jessica has been working on that. Jessica, I'll hand it over to you so that you can share the current work that has been published and additional work that's in progress.
Yes.
Thank you, Eden. Well, I will share my screen. 1 second. Because I'd like to show you exactly the changes I've made on the document. Are you seeing my screen with the quick start, how to start translating for OpenEDX? Yes. Great. Well, basically, what we discussed with Eden was to add some images under this section, finding a string to translate, so that the user can easily understand the steps to follow on this guideline. And well, it's now I believe that it's better explained, and also with the images, it is easier to understand where you need to click to start translating the string using transifex. And what else I added is the last part of the document has this section, useful links, which also I believe it was asked by Alexandra. Remember the Confluence site, it was not included in this document, and also we decided to include the OpenEDX website and the Transifex LexiQA integration page, because what is in progress is under also this section, the finding a string to translate. I decided to add another section that is on another pull request, writing and describing what is doing the QA check. When you click this QA check, the Transifex application is integrated with LexiQA. And well, we added with Eden and we reviewed the steps that you can follow to make the QA test. And well, this pull request is under review, and I believe that tomorrow it will be merged. And well, then I decided to make a review of the whole document, and well, the grammar, style, punctuation, and the whole text, sorry, was reviewed by me, and changes related to punctuation and to consistency are also done. And well, we already include the difference between the application and the OpenEDX platform here in this note. And also, well, if anyone wants to become a collaborator with this G-Translate, he or she needs to write to Eden. So this link also is included. Basically this. So I will ask you for feedback. So take a look at the document, and I believe that tomorrow it will be completed with the LexiQA section. So the idea is that you review the document, and in case you have any comment or any suggestion, chat me by Slack, and I can edit the document, of course, without any issue. Thank you very much. Could you be so kind and add the relevant links into the translation Slack channel so people can review it asynchronously and provide additional feedback? One other thing that we're going to add is the symlink strategy approach that was brought up today. So we'll work on getting that updated additionally. So I'll work with Jessica on that. I know we're running out of time here. I do want to point out that we have a meetup tomorrow about the Wikimedia project that we have discussed here in the past. They created an open source translation tool with the help of Edly by Abisoft to be able to simply manage full course translations. And RT Istanbul has also created a multi-language use platform that they want to present. So because this meetup is relevant to the group, if you have some time tomorrow, it's at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. It may be some useful presentations for you. It's free and virtual. So hopefully all of you can join us for that. Okay. We have 3 minutes left, so any questions? Yes, Pedro?
No, I was just opening the camera to say goodbye, probably.
That's very nice. Okay. Okay. With that said, thank you everyone for all of your efforts and your feedback. And I look forward to seeing you at our next meeting and connecting with you asynchronously as well. Take care.
Thank you, Regan. Thank you,
Everyone.
everyone.
Yeah,
Thank
bye,
you.
everybody.
Everyone.
Thanks a lot. Bye.